Hi, everyone. Welcome to another Webinar Wednesday. For those of you who are new to our webinar series, my name is Stephen Phelps, and I am the marketing manager here at Acumen. And the topic that we'll be covering today is how to go paperless in the hybrid workplace. Today's hybrid workplace means every department needs to communicate, collaborate, and work efficiently, whether you are working in the office or remote. So we decided to invite Patrick and Igor from Alltech to show you DocLink. If you're not familiar with DocLink, it is a Sage-endorsed document management solution that allows you to automate your business processes in any department. But before we get started, please note that this webinar is in listen-only mode, and if you have any questions, then please write them in the chat option and we'll answer them near the end of the presentation. We have a lot to cover in 1 hour, so I will now pass it on to Patrick.
Great. Thank you, Stephen, and thank you, Acumen, for allowing us to present to you folks, and welcome, and appreciate you folks spending the next hour with us. So going paperless in a hybrid workplace, digital transformation is happening everywhere. It's the forefront wave that's happening in a huge surge in technology because, folks are working remote, right? There's still, maybe you're going in the office part-time, or maybe you're still full-time remote. Whatever the case may be, access to documents and information at your fingertips is more important now than ever before, just because, traditionally a lot of organizations are storing things in paper, a lot of filing cabinets, offsite storage. So it's not as easily accessible if you're working part-time remote or full-time remote these days. And a recent research done by Gartner, when, about this time last year, they did a report on a lot of organizations and what the future of remote workforce or the future of the workforce is going to look like. And what they found when they interviewed a lot of these companies is they found that 82% is going to have somewhat of a part-time type of workforce, right? In terms of in the office, part-time in the office, part-time remote. Some other organizations said they're going to allow employees to go full-time remote. And then some other organizations mentioned that there's going to be a flexible schedule, right? They're going to allow employees to come in when they want or work from remote when they want. So it's important now to have a strategy in place and a solution in place to be able to fulfill all your, work from home or work in the office type of flexibility. Today's discussion, what we're going to cover is why go paperless? Why is that important? What is DocLink? DocLink as it relates for AP and AP automation. A lot of our clients start there. But then also how DocLink can impact all the different groups or all the different departments, no matter what type of organization or industry that you're in. So why go paperless? It's important to be able to have accessibility to your documents and content, right? No matter where we are, whether we're in the office or we're working remote, right? You want to be able to streamline your business process for folks that are on the road or remote, right? Being able to route things around for review and approval and automate that process, right? To get things approved, not have to worry about approving with a piece of paper. Minimizing any data entry that is needed. So with accounts payable automation, we'll talk about that, and that'll be part of our demo, how you could minimize or eliminate any data entry needed for specifically on the AP side. Automate delivery of documents, being able to send out documents electronically to your customers, to your vendors, if need be, or packages out of our system. Leverage our integration with Sage, and then simplify your audits. So auditors, are auditors coming into your office these days? Maybe they want things all electronic. Well, with DocLink, we can easily provide them access. You can provide them access to documents and everything electronically so that they could do your annual audits if you have annual auditors that come in, or maybe monthly or quarterly or twice a year, auditors come in for different things. The goal is to be able to access documents, any document or content for that matter, with any process from anywhere. The benefit at the end of the day is eliminating all your documents that are paper, right? The cost savings associated with that. So do you folks have offsite storage? or do you store things in a warehouse? Are you folks constantly, copying and making paper copies? Do you have multiple offices where you need to send everything to corporate because it's all on paper today? So there's courier costs for that. And time savings. Think about the time it takes you today if you're storing things in filing cabinets, the file to retrieve from a filing cabinet. And you have to be in the office to get these documents, and the manual approval process that you may be going through today with paper documents. And then what about strategic initiatives that you have throughout your organization, right? Being able to grow without having to add additional staff, maybe take advantage of making your audits easier, taking advantage of early payment discounts to get things approved on time, or avoid late fees on invoices. But then there's also disaster preparedness. If you think about this pandemic, it's kind of like a disaster in itself, right? Being prepared to have your employees access documents from anywhere and content, no matter where they are, so they could do their day-to-day job effectively. At this point, Stephen, if you could pop up the first polling question, I'd like to ask you folks and select the best answer. How are you storing documents today? Are you utilizing on-site filing cabinets in your office there? Do you folks have off-site storage, in some warehouse somewhere because you frankly don't have office space to store everything? Or are you scanning things today and you're storing things in a network file share? Or do you have some type of in-house software application today, but maybe it falls short in some of the functionality that it does? Maybe there's no integration with Sage. Or do you have a dungeon somewhere? So yeah, on-site filing cabinets, that's pretty common. We see that quite a bit. A lot of organizations still store things in filing cabinets. Network file share, it's great that you are storing things electronic, but certainly there's better ways to manage it, because when you're storing things in network file share, how do you manage security? How do you, if you have access to that, to that network file share, you'll have access to all the documents. So security becomes, a need there. And plus, what about workflow and how easy is it to find? Network file share, I've seen organizations where they store things in network file shares. There's millions of documents there. How do you pinpoint the document you're looking for and access it? So certainly there's some challenges there. And of course, a dungeon, there's always a challenge with that. A dark place. Moving on. So how does DocLink work? Great question. Let's take a look at a visual diagram on how DocLink works. So the core of DocLink is the repository, and we have two flavors of DocLink. We have our traditional on-premise version of DocLink, where DocLink gets installed, configured on your server, documents are stored there. But we also have a cloud version of DocLink that sits on Microsoft Azure. It's a true multi-tenant SaaS cloud solution of DocLink. So we have two flavors there, on-premise and cloud version of DocLink. A lot of different ways you could bring in documents or content into DocLink to store and manage. So paper-based documents can be scanned in, and we store paper-based documents typically as TIFF or PDF documents once they're scanned in. And when you're scanning, you can utilize OCR. OCR stands for optical character recognition. There's a lot of different ways you can capture and bring in documents. We talked about OCR here, which stands for optical character recognition, where it reads data on the document and picks it up. We could pick up documents from email, from network folder, but then you could also bring in documents that are, or content for that matter, that are already in electronic format, and we'll store them in their native format. So we could store Excel, PDF, Word. We have customers storing WAV files, multimedia files, engineering drawings, and AutoCAD. So we don't care what format it's in, we could store and manage it in their native format. And once documents or content are brought into DocLink, you can have workflow processes around it to automate and route documents or content around for review and approval electronically. And it can be based on routing rules as well. We also have a forms capability where you can create different types of business forms. And then we have our out-of-the-box integration with Sage ERPs. We integrate with all the different Sage ERPs. So we could feed and pick up data back and forth. common use case of that is on the AP side. We also have the capability to send out documents out of our system, and we'll touch more on that in a little bit. But you can package things together automatically, electronically out of our system based on conditions to send it out to customers or vendors. A lot of different ways you can retrieve and access documents, whether it's through our integration with the Sage screens. So a lot of different ways you can retrieve for documents and content, whether it's through our web client access, through any web browser, smart client, which is the desktop application, through our integration with Sage and the screens there, or through our mobile app, which we support iOS and Android compatible devices. DocLink is often adopted by our client customers through the AP process and AP automation. Why? Because it's so paper intensive. And it's the most tangible and obvious place for ROI and within this department, because efficiency with AP processes relies on one or two things. On both, it's one, the time to process an invoice, and two, the cost to process it. So we find a lot of our customers starting with the AP process. A lot of really paper intensive and time intensive there. So with AP, let's talk about that initially. So why accounts payable? Time and money are the two key drivers with AP automation, and most of AP departments suffer from high AP transaction costs and cycle times. And here's research done through Ardent Partners, through research they have done and surveyed a lot of organizations, that with AP automation, best-in-class accounts payable performance, with best-in-class, your savings are huge. I mean, what these companies, when they're able to automate AP with best-in-class solutions like DocLink, processing cost is about 81% lower, and processing cycle times is around 73% faster than your traditional paper-based process. So huge times and cost savings overall when you're able to automate AP. Here's, with this next screen, you see here, this is a tradition, all the different steps in a traditional manual paper-based AP process, right? All these different steps, these 12 steps on average. A lot of organizations go through all these steps. Now with DocLink and being able to utilize DocLink for AP automation, we're able to eliminate roughly 60% of this task that were manual and time consuming, where we leave basically the coding, any matching process that needs to be done can be automated, simple approval if need be, and then we deliver and feed it into the ERP. So a lot of the manual tasks become eliminated that are inefficient and that are susceptible to errors gets eliminated. Our approvals, we make it super easy where you can approve right from email, right from your mobile device. So with email approvals within DocLink, we make it super easy for people to approve. You get approved right from email here, as you see, simply the document attached there, hit approve and deny as an approver. We make it really easy. That leads us to our second polling question here. And Steven, if you could pop it up on the screen. What are your biggest business challenges in AP? And if that's even one. If it is it because you folks have too much paper? Is it a manual and inefficient approval process? You're not able to access all documents related to your vendor invoices in a timely manner? Are you spending too much time doing manual data entry? Unable to access documents, specifically with remote workforce? Okay, so yeah, too much paper, very common. We see that quite a bit. A lot of organizations are still storing things in paper, so definitely DocLink can help you out in manual and inefficient approval there, and being able to access all your documents related to your vendor invoices. So those are probably the top three common things that we see as well. Great. Moving on, at this point, I'd like to turn things over to Igor, and we'll walk through DocLink as it relates to AP and AP automation.
Perfect, thank you, Patrick. So let me share my screen. Effectively, the automation, of course, is going to start with getting the documents in, and the very first point of integration to the ERP that we would like to demonstrate is going to be use of the print function directly into DocLink, as well as the availability of the document view. And this is kind of in the AP scenario when we're talking about purchase order invoices, where purchase order invoices in question will be available for the user to view, as well as available for creation. So when I will just take one of the existing purchase orders in the system, and this is where everything's going to start, because as soon as you create a purchase order, and in my example, what the thing that needs to happen is the posting. So when you hit post, a copy of the purchase order is stored in DocLink automatically. And after that, users are able to use the view documents function that's on the bottom left as well. So by hitting the view documents button, we are taken automatically to the associated order that is stored in DocLink. At that stage, we not only can store the document, but later match and link this document to other that we're going to receive, as well as, for example, if necessary, distribute that set purchase order to vendors automatically upon printing. And that's a powerful portion of integration and automation that, again, I wanted to demonstrate right out of the bat. So let me close these screens and go into the document reception now. By far, the most popular methods of getting the documents in is going to be invoice registration from an email. In my case, I have a generic email address right there. It's fairly straightforward. We have email address invoices@myaltech.com. And a lot of companies do this already when they have a generic email address where vendors supposed to send their invoices and they're going to be processed. But we take it a step further. We are going to take the attachments and bring them into the workflow automatically without user interaction. So we'll be cutting down the time necessary to manually register and process these documents. And of course, we will be still keeping the possibility of scanning. So let's say you have documents that you got in paper. Let's say I have two documents right there. We're going to imagine that they are paper-based. So I'm going to take those two, put them in the folder on the right. And this is simulating scanning. Somebody took those two invoices, scanned them into the folder. And as you've seen, they've been picked up and also brought into the workflow. So these are the two most popular methods of document registration processing. After that, documents, they land in OCR, where we would like to see the extraction results, make any corrections and changes if necessary. And what you can see on the screen right now, this is a common queue of documents that are pending to be processed through the OCR. And the documents that we registered at the bottom. So we can go ahead and take one of these batches, open it, and see the results of the OCR. So for example, here we have clearly a purchase order invoice. We have all the key information identified successfully, as we can see, as well as the line item details on the document. Very simple. So OCR has built-in logic. It continuously learns. So another cutoff time is going to be to the reduction of manual labor for keying the data, for validating the information, as by looking at the items, looking at the purchase order, looking at the vendor, we can automatically cross-reference this information with the ERP. If any errors take place, let's say that's an invoice, but it's a non-PO, so I'm going to switch to the non-PO profile. And if any of the data is not extracted or something is incorrect, I can select the proper values. Again, just using the UI of the environment to guide me through this process. But at the same time, fields that I designated for extraction, such as vendor information, amounts due, etc., all of that is extracted and available for the user. And again, that's there to cut down the entry time. Imagine you have 5,000 or 50,000 or 15,000 of invoices a year. This would be a life-saving tool from a perspective of reduction of manual labor. And we're going to submit this to place our documents into the workflow. After documents are being registered, so effectively what we've seen so far, we printed our purchase order into DocLink, we have it stored, we got invoices registered into the system via email, through scanning sources, etc. So now they're going to land in the workflow, and users are going to be taking it from there. DocLink is a product that exists as the web client as well as a desktop application, and you have a choice of either using the web application for accessing to the workflow, for example. So I have my accounts payable workflow here, where I can see my common queue of documents that are pending to be processed. So let's say these are unprocessed, and this is my common queue of files that are there. I'm going to sort them by status date, just to see the one from today on the top. You can see our PO invoices. For example, I can hit and preview my PO invoice, for example, to see if that's the one that I would like to process. Same ideas apply to the non-PO invoice. I can look at this one and also see my non-PO invoices. And if we're talking about PO-based scenario, let's say I'm selecting this PO invoice right there. On the bottom of the screen, DocLink will actually show us any supporting documentation, any supporting documents that are related to the common denominator, being the purchase order number. So we can see that there are already 2 invoices for the same purchase order available in the system. So, and that's, again, we're talking about the web application, if this is the way that you choose to go. System is available as well in the desktop client, where users can go through processes in the more common scenario of the desktop. It's just a question of common personal preferences. And as I mentioned, the first status is unprocessed, where we are picking this up and where, let's say, we're processing a non-PO invoice. And let's create a distribution stamp before we send this for approval cycle. And that is a fairly straightforward process where the data came from OCR, and we can create a brand new distribution stamp where users can then code the document manually to specific GL accounts. So for example, I hit create a new stamp. My header details are filled in with information that came from the OCR engine. I don't need to do anything else with it. And now I can add my line items manually by hitting add and providing the distribution details. So for example, specifying my company. If necessary, I can specify the GL account, associated amounts, etc. So, and I can add as many of these accounts as I would like. So for example, anytime I hit enter, so in this example, we can see that we can assign different GL account to I have access to. For example, that's the freight. And also list associated accounts. Now, another method of doing this, I'll be going to canceling out of this. It will be actually selecting a template where something recurring or a vendor that have a specific GL distribution detail that you would like to repurpose. You can select that template to cut down the time for coding. So when I'm selecting hard batteries, now not only my header details are filled in with information such as posting date, maybe account details, but also my distribution details being the GL account codes. And at this stage, I am ready to stamp this one and send it for approval to the person who will be next in line. Approval cycles are very flexible. So let's say my next step here is going to be approved by the CFO. Nevertheless, users have ability to send it to different people, being a facility manager, being IT manager, maybe other people who you have created through this life cycle. So basically those who will be responsible for the next stages in the life cycle of this document. Alternatively, instead of doing the manual routing, DocLink can actually decide where that said document is supposed to go by looking at what this document is, effectively looking at the vendor name, looking at the total amount, looking at the GL accounts that you assigned, looking at the user who created the GL distribution, or maybe actually look into every single factor that we just discussed, being combination of some of these or all of these factors. So when we create a distribution stamp, it is burned into the document as a second page, and we are going to send this information alongside the first page of an invoice. Again, in my case, I only have a single page invoice. Maybe it will be multi-page in your case, to a CFO for approval. So I'm going to hit send to send this document to Mr. CFO. Mr. CFO is going to get an email notification that will alarm them about the fact that there are documents that are pending their review. As you can see, the emails are coming in, and they may get notification that will inform them about necessity to take a step and approve something by something like this, but it's very generic, saying, Mr. CFO, you have a new document to approve, launch the workflow and have a look, right? That's one method of doing that. Another method of doing that is actually getting an invoice attached. This is where we have a copy of the invoice. We have a distribution stamp in the document. We have basic information. We call these data tokens, and we can approve or deny directly in the email. So another method of doing that as well. I can see that in some cases, receiving an email per document will be maybe annoying. Therefore, people may be reserving to receiving summary reports like this one, where they're getting a summary report saying, hi, IT manager, you have 5 documents to approve. Go ahead and do that accordingly. And at that stage, maybe the person would reserve to, let's say, going into their workflow in the web. So I'm going to switch the gears. I'm going to switch to the CFO workflow. And Mr. CFO is looking at his common queue or her common queue right here, where there are requisition documents, AP invoices, and expense report pending for their review. And at this stage, they can easily look at the requests that they are out there. Let's say that's the requisition, just buying some filing cabinets, then it's another requisition, look at the invoice, and look at multiple documents in this manner to kind of determine, do they want to approve all of them, just some of them, etc. And if they want to approve all of them afterwards, instead of doing them one by one and hitting approve button in the email, they can select all of these documents and send them all in bulk to approved for payment status. And as you can see, very flexible system depending on your preferences. You can do one by one approval. You can do approval in the email. You can do approval in bulk using the web client or desktop client, for example. As well as approval is available through the mobile app for those of you who would take a step even further and get the DocLink mobile, where you can just approve everything on your phone. As some of my colleagues likes to give a comparison, sitting on the beach and having a glass of margarita in your hand. Everything is possible. It's a paperless, it's a workspace, it's the remote workspace, everything that's allowed it according to the business practices of a set company. In this example, what I'm going to do is hit to approve button right there, and system is going to take me to a page where I need to issue my approval note. Notes can be optional or required. In my case, it is an optional note, but I will provide the detail of the note saying, please pay ASAP to my coded invoice and submit the note. And my document also moved to the approved payment status. From the workflow perspective, that's the end of the line for an AP invoice, because everything that's approved for payment or other documents that are approved for payment, being requisitions, for example, or expense report or whatever other documents are running through your AP workflow, they're batched together and exported to the ERP. And talking about the export side, similarly to using the system for viewing batches, viewing documents. We can also take it a step further, and when the documents are exported, they are pushed into respected ERP screens on the other side, where users can go ahead and utilize in the same way the view documents capabilities of the environment, where they can go ahead, take a document in question, let's say identifying that a specific document that we have, let's say last AP transaction or a transaction that was before that, and use the view documents button to see invoice associated with the said transaction. For example, hitting the view documents button will take us back to the historical invoice that we processed. We'll have our distribution details that have been provided. And very importantly, we will also have approval notes indicating who, where, and how issued the notes for approval for this specific invoice. So that's kind of in a nutshell, the life cycle for the documents in question, where we are looking at multiple scenarios for approval, when we're looking for the scenarios of getting the documents in, etc. So on that note, I will turn this over back to Patrick.
All right. So you folks just saw a demo of what Igor went through, which was the capability of accounts payable automation with OCR within DocLink. Let's now talk about some other areas where, beyond AP automation, where you can utilize DocLink for. So the quote to cash and accounts receivable process as an example. So think about all the documentations. If you have a sales order process within your organization, you have customers, you can have, quote that you send out to customer and you want to store and manage, or multiple quotes for that matter. Incoming customer PO that you receive, the actual sales order that you create out of Sage, any sales order acknowledgement that you send out with that, the ticket when you actually, for the warehouse to pick the items to ship, and then the AR invoices or invoice, and then maybe a signed delivery ticket that you want to capture and bring into our system as well. The customer's payment details. So a lot of different documents that you can have, and maybe even workflow processes around these documents that you may have on the sales order or AR side. Another strong use case on the AR side is being able to send out AR invoices and supporting documents. So I know out of the ERP system, out of Sage, you can send out an AR invoice. But what about if you need to, with the invoice, you need to include a signed delivery ticket, for instance, that has to be manually correlated together and then send out via email or send out via paper mail. Well, within DocLink, we can automate that process for you. The signed delivery tickets in our system, when you create the invoice to send it out, we can pick up that invoice from Sage, bring it in our system, correlate automatically the documents associated with it, and send it out. So that's what we call supplemental documentation that can be sent out. Another common use case that I've seen is from a client is sending out monthly statements to their clients. And with that statement, they want to correlate all the supporting invoices to that monthly statement. Our system, DocLink, can do that automatically for you based on, whatever setting you want. Last day of the month, the first day of the next month, whatever that may be, so that it can automatically be sent out to your customer without someone having to manually manage that manually, right? With whether it's paper or correlating it to an email manually and sending it out. It's pretty intensive to have to manage that manually. So at the end of the day, improve customer service. If your customer has an inquiry about certain things, all the documentation could be in DocLink where it's easily accessible at your fingertips versus telling your client, hey, I got to do some research, go back. Well, while they're on the call, you could do that research right from your computer and answer any customer inquiries. So let's talk about a customer evidence that utilizes the DocLink for AR automation. So it's a food and beverage manufacturer that we have. It's a customer called American Fruits and Flavors. They started, like many of our clients, started out with AP and AP automation. They started implementing DocLink for AP and quickly felt the benefits of the system for AP, eliminating the manual process as it relates to AP, the paper-intensive process there. But they ended up looking at DocLink for other capabilities, and they came back to us and say, well, what about the AR side? Some of the challenges we're facing is our organization is growing. We're invoicing more and more customers, and we need to grow this AP department, this AR department. Is there something that we're able to take advantage of with DocLink that can help us with that? Absolutely, because what they were doing was correlating all the documentations to send out to their customers. Like I mentioned, correlating, monthly statements that they come out of their ERP system, getting all the invoices and sending it out manually. Some of them via paper, and some of them electronically, but they still had to manually correlate all those. So you think about tens of thousands of these invoices and these packages that need to go out. We were able to correlate everything together, manage it all electronically, and then sending it out based on whatever time interval that they wanted for each of these clients, which allowed them to grow without having to add additional headcount. And plus, they were storing all these documentations all in filing cabinets and storage as well. So not only were they able to decrease the time spent of managing their AR invoices manually, but they were able to grow without having to add additional staff and eliminate storage as well. So tremendous win for American Fruits and Flavors. Other opportunities. What about HR? Every organization has an HR department, right? Whether it's one person or a team of people that actually manages employee files and documentation. So another customer example, one client that I work with, they're out in Puerto Rico. It's a supermarket chain called Econo Supermarkets. Large supermarket chain there in Puerto Rico. And like many other clients, they started with accounts payable automation to really streamline that because they had issues with managing their paper invoices, right? Very common story with the previous client, American Fruits and Flavors. They were able to eliminate all their filing cabinets on the AP side, but after utilizing DocLink for AP for 2 years, they realized, you know what, there's got to be a better way to manage our employee files and documentation. And as you can imagine, with a supermarket chain, tons of employees, a lot of turnover, a lot of new hires. So on average, I think they were managing somewhere around 30 different document types for employees. And it was important for them to get that all electronically because they had tons and tons of filing cabinets in the HR department. So what was important for them was storing and managing all these HR documents electronically, but then also streamline some of the hiring process and the HR process, such as resume review process, time off requests that was all manual and paper, and then employee events such as anniversaries, maybe personnel action notice or annual reviews, employee onboarding, right? New hire onboarding, things like that. And what was also important for them was ensuring compliance because they were required to store and manage. They were getting audited on their employees and the documentations there for their employees. So that was important for them as well. Unforeseen benefits and improvements that Econo Supermarket saw was utilizing it for HR. They realized, you know what, we can also utilize DocLink as an employee web service or a portal for where our employees can come in and look for and retrieve for certain documentations that relates to them, right? Based on our security, we could set up users to have specific access roles and rights. So they were able to access W-2s electronically through our web client access, payroll stubs, and there was different policies that they had to sign and updated policies. So, you know, notifications can go out and they could sign these policies electronically. So it really allowed employees to be self-sufficient as well when they needed to access certain documentations instead of always going back to HR or coordinating with HR to get certain documentations, right? So another area that we find a lot of organizations have benefit in as well, which is contract management. Contract management also is a big area. And think about all the different types of contracts that you folks manage. You're going to have contracts between you and customers, you and vendors. Even on the HR side, you might have contractual employees that, 1099 employees, and you need to manage contracts for, right? So contract management, lease agreements, service agreements, change orders, things like that becomes a high need. So with contract management, we have the capability of storing and manage contracts through the life cycle and based on security, who can access from anywhere, right? Based on security. We could set alerts for contracts expiring. So think about a contract, 30 days, 60, 90 days before it expires. It could send an alert to a person or a group of people, hey, take a look at this contract. It's a contract between us and a customer. Let's try to get them to renew it, right? So contract management is a big play there. We also have a checkout and check-in capability with version control, so you can track different iterations and versions of contracts before it's finalized. We have an integration with DocuSign where we could send it out via DocuSign to get signed, fully executed, and stored back in DocLink fully executed. We could even manage contract templates in our system as well. So a lot of value with contract management. We're seeing that more and more these days. So how can DocLink impact even other areas throughout your organization? So we touched on a lot of areas already. We talked about AP and AR. We talked about AP, AR, HR, contract. But what about facilities management or field service? Do you folks have a field service organization that you need to store and manage contracts, and you have folks and technicians on the road that need to access documents while they're out on the field at a customer site? So that becomes important as well. So being able to access everything at your fingertips becomes important. When you're out on a field service call, maybe you're servicing an equipment that's broken, you want to take a picture before and after you've fixed it, and include that when you build a customer, for example. So a lot of different areas where DocLink can come into play throughout your organization, depending on whatever industry you're in. We can fulfill your needs there. So some of the key differentiators DocLink is truly an enterprise-wide solution with accounts payable and beyond capability. We have the OCR and automated matching capability for PO-based invoices to do three-way matching or two-way matching. Definitely configurable workflows where you can set up workflows to route things based on customer, based on vendor, based on dollar amount. We can configure these routing rules to route documents around electronically to one or more individuals to make sure things get approved in a timely manner. We support a remote workforce with our web access capability with any web browser and mobile capability with iOS and Android compatible devices. We didn't touch too much on our forms capability today, but certainly forms. So think about the forms that you have in your organization that may be on Word, Excel, or paper today. We have a lot of clients implementing our forms for like expense report, requisition, check request, new vendor setup, new customer setup. Think about the HR forms too. So like Econo Supermarket, they implemented, a new employee onboarding form. They implemented, time off request form, personnel action notice form. So there's a lot of different forms on the HR side that we can implement and configure for you folks as well. So big, powerful tool there. And of course, on-premise and cloud offering of DocLink, depending on what your technology strategy is internally, we have both offerings, on-premise and cloud. That leads us to our last polling question here. Stephen, if you pop that up, why are you attending today's session? Is it to build knowledge and you'd like to learn more about what the capabilities are as it relates to document and content management? Did your boss see the invite and he or she made you attend this meeting or this webinar? Is there an initiative in your department or is it something you could use today and you'd like to be contacted and you want to learn more? Select the best answer here. Oh yeah, knowledge building. Yes, great knowledge. Certainly, hopefully you folks learned something today that you could bring back to your team. And if you don't have an initiative today, certainly it can become an initiative in the near future. And if you have an initiative today in your department, certainly reach out to us. We'd love to learn more and get more information on what you're looking to accomplish and see if we have a good solution for you. But moving on here, for attending today's session, we want to offer everybody who attended today's session 20% off the DocLink software if you folks purchase or subscribe by September 30th of this year. So great value for attending today's session. And then at this point, wanted to see if there's any questions that came through, Stephen, through the chat during the presentation that we can answer.
Yes, so we actually can go ahead and get started. So one of the questions that came in during the presentation, it's a long one. So it says, I have a document image that is associated with a transaction posting the expense to the account 6250 travel. Then a few months later, we discovered that the transaction should have posted to the account 6350 rent and reclass the transaction. How is the document image treated? Does it follow the transactions automatically, or are there additional steps needed?
So the described scenario that's true. So if I understand the scenario correctly, we're looking at the coding that has been done incorrectly and need to be adjusted, if I understand this. So when people are getting an email or notification about their approval for the coding, they have ability to go back to the coding provided and make the change. So effectively reassign it properly. And then a transaction made will be completely exported to the ERP system. So it will be following the invoice without necessity to do any additional coding when it's being pushed into the ERP.
Thanks, Igor. Another question that came in, it says, when an invoice comes in and has a preset approver attached, does AP still get a chance to review before invoice is forwarded to the approver?
Yes, if necessary. That's all the setup of the workflow, which you control.
Perfect.
Yeah, that certainly could be configured as part of the workflow.
Yeah. And then another one says, if you don't get the OCR module, how do you manually index your documents?
When you've seen it today arrived for the processing as in process status, they were already pre-indexed. So in the same screen, users are going to be indexing documents manually before sending them for approval.
Perfect. I think we're gonna wait a few more seconds to see if any other questions come in, and if not, we can go ahead and wrap up.
Yeah, and certainly if there's any questions that come over after today's session, reach out to the Acumen team, send them an email here, am@acumenfl.com, or give them a call for the account management team, and they can get those questions answered. These folks are interested. It looks like there was some folks that had an initiative today that would like to get started. Certainly, reach out to the Acumen team, and we can go through the evaluation process, help you evaluate DocLink further for your business needs.
Perfect. And I actually think that's all the questions we have. So I can wrap up as well. So be sure to follow us on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook to keep up with the latest content and what's happening around Sage. We do plan on recording this webinar to our YouTube channel. So please subscribe or reach out to your account manager for the link. Our next webinar Wednesday, we're probably going to be having Avalara, which they'll be going through 2021 sales tax updates. So be on the lookout for invites. I believe that's all we have for you guys. So again, thanks for joining us today. Thank you, Alltech, for the great presentation, and we look forward to seeing you on our next webinar Wednesday.